I thought I was helping my son until I saw the text that changed everything. When I read his text, I knew the $8,000 I'd spent had just vanished. That instant, the weekend and my patience ended. I was folding sun hats into my suitcase when my son texted to say plans had changed and his wife preferred only her side of the family on the trip I had funded. $8,000 were already gone. Cabin, activities, groceries for meals I'd imagined cooking while we caught up in easy, ordinary ways. The words blurred on the screen. I set the phone on the floral bedspread I'd slept on alone for 2 years, in the small apartment I moved to after agreeing they could settle into the 4-bedroom colonial with the garden I had tended for 3 decades. Robert built that house with weekend hands and stubborn pride. Every board still holds his patience. I'd said yes because they said they needed space, and I told myself the rent from my old place would help me on a fixed income. I'd given them the car, too. Robert's pristine, 2019 sedan he barely drove before the diagnosis. It was supposed to be temporary. Months kept passing. I went to the small kitchen and set the kettle on. Steam pricked my eyes. The handle warmed under my fingers. The cupboard door sighed on its tired hinge. It felt like a home made of afterthoughts. I remembered granite counters and an island where David once did homework while I stirred soup. Sandra had repainted my soft yellow walls the week they moved in and called my taste dated when she thought I couldn't hear. I bit my tongue then the way mothers do, even when their mouths taste like pennies. The kettle sang. I poured over a tea bag, the generic brand I buy now. When my phone buzzed again, the second message thanked me for understanding and mentioned that her parents were covering expenses, so I shouldn't worry about money. The heat pricked my throat. The trip I had paid for had been dressed up as someone else's generosity, and my son was comfortable inside that version. What I kept in my jewelry box wasn't jewelry alone. Under my grandmother's pearls lay the unsigned deed transfer, the title listing me as owner of Robert's car and promissory notes, $25,000 for a business that never launched, $15,000 for student loans, $8,000 for the wedding where I sat alone at the mother of the groom table, while her side filled $3,000. I had documented every kindness from Robert's life insurance, unsure why, only certain some future needed proof. That evening I called Sarah Chen, the lawyer who handled Robert's estate. We reviewed the facts. Without completed signatures and filings, the house remained mine. The insurance named me. David was an authorized driver, not an owner. Sarah's voice was steady. I could reclaim my property. Then I called Mrs. Rodriguez, the agent who sold me this apartment. Her tone carried a weary compassion, the kind that comes from seeing patterns repeat in different families with the same ache. We spoke of timelines, notices, and a move measured in weeks, not wishes. Before dawn, I drafted what I'd avoided writing. Lawful notice, 30 days. I saved a copy to a folder with Robert's name on it because that made me brave enough to read it twice and press print. I paused at the sink, ran cool water over my wrists, and laid a towel flat to feel its rough edge against my fingertips. I moved a lone spoon in a slow circle inside the cup, listening to the soft chime of porcelain, counting 12 turns like a small prayer I finally knew how to finish. I placed the cup on the counter, left my palm on the warm ring it made, and let the quiet lengthen until it felt like spine instead of silence. I had mistaken endurance for love. Now it felt like clarity. I thought I knew the depth of the betrayal. Almost. The next morning, David called, cheerful with departure energy, describing crowded trunks, her parents' RV, and an apology from Sandra that sounded rehearsed, even without hearing it. I listened. My answer was gentle and kept to the weather of the day. After the call, I opened my laptop and sent what I had to send. The notice by certified mail, the insurance change removing authorized drivers who no longer respected the privilege, the appointment to change the locks the house. Paper has a particular life between your fingers when it becomes proof. I spread documents on the table, smooth vellum, thin printer pages, the embossed seal from the title. I flattened a corner with the side of my thumb and felt the press of the notary stamp through the sheet like a faint bruise. The ink bled a little where I signed my name, one steady line claiming what I had been told I should release. The envelope glue tasted stale and strangely sweet. I sealed, labeled, stacked, and slid everything into a canvas tote that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old paperbacks. I ran my thumb along each sealed flap, feeling the glue bite and hold. The tote's strap tugged at my shoulder. On the table, the tidy stack looked less like paper and more like a spine I could borrow. If a boundary doesn't leave a trace you can touch, how long before people pretend it never existed? They left for the mountains. I went to my storage unit. Dust rose in soft clouds as I reached for the box with Robert's tools. The metal handles chilled my palms. I opened bins of our life. The wedding china nested in tissue, photo albums whose plastic sleeves crackled, the baby book with my careful handwriting marking first words and steps. I remembered catching David so many times I didn't notice when he stopped leaning toward me. I packed what I would reclaim first: framed photos, the blue throw from our old couch, the chipped teapot Robert insisted still poured best. The air smelled like cardboard and faint machine oil. I wiped my nose on the back of my wrist and laughed at the smudge it left, a small human streak in a place of rectangles and lists. Mrs. Rodriguez met me at the house with a quiet nod that said she'd seen this before. Crossing my own threshold after 18 months felt like an echo. The garden was dead, rose canes brittle, beds swallowed by weeds. Inside, my soft rooms had been replaced by sharp angles and screens. Robert's office was a gaming room, my guest room a yoga studio. Even the light seemed altered, cooler, and busier. I stood in the bedroom where we had read the paper on Sundays. I felt neither nostalgic nor cruel, only awake. Love, I realized, is not a never-ending subtraction. Out on the porch, I pressed my palm to the railing Robert had sanded smooth. The wood's grain rose like memory under my skin. I knelt to touch the doormat, rubber ridges warm from the afternoon sun, and lifted its corner just to hear the small stick-slip sound. The key I still owned lay cold in my pocket. I turned it once, not to lock or unlock, but to feel the weight of decision. A neighbor's wind chime counted the moment for me. A breeze lifted a curl of sawdust from the porch rail and set it drifting. A mower started somewhere, a slow drone, and I pictured straight lines laid across a yard that would finally be mine to tend. When caretaking becomes erasure, what story are you allowed to write back into your own house? By the time they returned and found their keys wouldn't turn, my phone was already buzzing. For inspection and safety, I'd changed the locks and posted access windows during the 30-day period. I let it ring until the sound felt less like demand and more like proof that I was capable of letting it ring. When I answered, David asked what was wrong with the locks. I explained, without drama, that nothing was wrong with the locks and everything was wrong with the assumption. He asked where they were supposed to go. I remembered the weekend I had paid movers I couldn't afford, so I wouldn't burden them with my boxes. I remembered watering a garden the last time before handing over the hose. I remembered Sandra avoiding my move because she didn't want drama and then bringing it like weather wherever she went. I told him there were 30 days in which adults can make adult plans. He invoked family and forgiveness. I countered with respect and give and take. Somewhere behind his breath, I heard her crying and imagined suitcases thudding against the porch I had polished with lemon oil every spring. When he mentioned Sandra's pregnancy, my heart lurched toward the old softness. For a split second, I saw myself handing back the keys, apologizing for my selfishness. Then I remembered 30 years of being the family ATM. My spine straightened. A grandchild deserved grandparents who were honored, not exploited. The news deserved joy, but joy does not require self-abandonment. A grandchild deserved grandparents who were honored, not used. I offered congratulations and the suggestion to start with the house whose generosity had been so easy to prefer. I brewed tea in the china cups I retrieved from storage, the ones with the fading gold rim that still hold warmth just right. I set one cup on Robert's side of the small table out of habit and left it there, steaming beside mine. Some habits are grief, some are gratitude, some are the bridge between both. That week, in the slow hours between errands, I began to make lists for the return: soil for the beds, heirloom tomatoes for late summer planting, a gallon of soft yellow paint to take the chill off the walls. I decided where the family photos would go and which room would be mine again for quiet mornings. I phoned the locksmith. I called the utility companies. I changed insurance details and updated mailing addresses with a rhythm that felt like sweeping grit out a back door. I slept better than I had in months. In the storage unit again, I rolled the hand truck under a stack of boxes labeled "Kitchen Fragile." The rubber wheels hummed. My palms stung a little where the metal grip had a nick. I taped closed the last carton with a firm palm, pressed the edge to crease the tape, and listened to the rip-stop clean. I tucked Robert's hammer into the top where I could grab it to rehang the old frame that always needed a nail in a place people never expected. I left room in the box for one more thing: a folded towel that still smelled like our first home in winter, soap, paper, and a hint of pine. The hand truck rattled over a crack in the concrete and steadied. My breath did the same. I looped twine around the bin and cinched it. The knot firm, muscle memory from years of tying up tomato vines. You can learn to lift what you once thought would break you, and it turns out what breaks you is the weight you refuse to set down. On the day before my move, I walked the length of my tiny apartment, touching what I would not carry back: its narrowness, thinner light, the squeak in the cabinet hinge that had learned my hours. I thanked it anyway. Then I set my alarm early, laid out comfortable clothes, and placed my old house key beside my phone. I brushed my hair with the care I bring to things I'm keeping. I slept with the window cracked, listening to the city like rain, already hearing underneath it the hush of my garden when it's late and the hose is coiled and the dirt under my nails means the day had purpose. In the morning, I woke clear. I loaded the car with the help of movers who called me ma'am without making me feel small. I checked the seat pocket for the list I'd written in thick marker so I wouldn't improvise my way into forgetting. I took one last look at the bedspread and felt nothing but gratitude for a place that held me while I remembered how to hold myself. I turned the key in Robert's car and watched the dash lights glow. I didn't think of the fast food wrappers I had cleaned from these seats months ago. I thought of Sunday mornings and classical music coming thin through a garage radio, water stripes drying on a windshield while he worked the chamois in careful arcs. The chime that means ready sounded like permission. I drove home. By sunset, the locksmith's van would pull away, the garden hose would be uncoiled, and painting the living room a soft yellow was scheduled, while my cups waited on the counter for their next quiet afternoon. Somewhere across town, 2 adults would be looking at calendars, bank statements, and the truth. Somewhere inside me, a steadier mother would be looking at a future that finally included her. Tomorrow, I would carry my boxes through my own front door, and my son would have 30 days to find another. After a lifetime of saying yes, what could be braver than a final no?